Doing today? So let me ask you a question today. So how do you know how carbon credit works? I know we heard a lot about this term carbon credit, and I've talked a lot about it recently. I talked about direct, talked about carbon price. Not everybody is as conversant. That's why I wanted to take some time this week, definitely to come back to that, explain to you a little bit how carbon market work, so that you and I can have a better conversation. Also, I can get to hear from you. That is what I'm offering to give you. Is that okay? That's fine. So, welcome everybody. My name is Tony Teo. So, is that the first time you come into my platform? I want to say welcome to this platform, right? So, what we do is very simple. We want to demystify the renewable energy sector for you and make it easy and seamless for you to connect with us. This is our purpose here, right? And we look at a range of topics that will be interesting you if you are an investor, you want to pour some money into the sector, but you don't know how to do it. You don't have the right information. You find all the right detail, confirmation, information that you want. If, for example, you're a business, you say, okay, I want to decarbonize my companies. I like to get involved, but I'm lacking some information. How can I do it in this issue? From all the video that we'll be publishing so far, there's going to be at least a few that will be of interest for you. Or you telling me, I'm a professional, I want to jump into the sector. Again, you'll find all you need in here. And if you're a company, you have a solution that is actually speaking to any of the theme, the topic that we're talking about here. I want to hear from you because I'm not sure a lot of people will know who you are, right? Excellent, that's fine. So carbon market, let's come back to that. So how does it work? How does it work? That's the whole idea of this conversation today. So what I'm going to do is just show you a couple of slides here, just sort of recap a little bit in a simple format, simple, right? For you to understand what it is all about. But before I do that, let me just say that first of all, if you haven't done it yet, I would really, really encourage you to subscribe to our platform, whether it's on YouTube, it's on LinkedIn, it's on X, not Twitter anymore, or it's on Telegram, right? So all those platforms, choose the one that is most suitable for you, and let's connect and let's make sure that you subscribe, you click the notification button so that whenever there's a new video, you are aware of it, and do spread and share the message as well, right? That is what I want. Now, let me share the document that I prepared to you. First of all, just to explain to you what is the whole idea behind it, and then come back and maybe talk about the actual details, right, behind it. So here I'm sharing my screen, so you should be able to see that in a minute. Hopefully, I think you can see that right now. Yeah. So the idea of carbon credit. So how does it work here? So as you see here, so we have a lot of companies that we have around here. So they are producing all sorts of product services. And why they're doing it, they're obviously producing some carbon. All of us producing carbon, you have to understand that we all have a carbon footprint, right? So when we have our carbon footprint, we actually throw into the atmosphere some CO2. Normally the CO2 is captured by the plant. The plant use that thought to multiply themselves. That's sort of their food that a nutrient that they need obviously to grow. The plant will produce more plants. From the plant we get the oxygen feeding the population that we have, right? Up until now, everything is good, everything is correct, there is no problem whatsoever, right? So everything is perfect. Now the trouble because it comes when we have a lot more companies that we have, with the industrial revolution. As you know, we have been producing more and more carbon into the atmosphere. So it becomes difficult for actually plants, for the natural system to absorb enough of those CO2, those surplus of CO2 that is produced. It's becoming difficult to absorb it and to produce the oxygen so that we have. So definitely there is like a surplus of oxygen, of CO2 that will stay up in the atmosphere, create the global warming that you need in all of the challenges that we're fighting with, right? So that problem. I think you are very, very familiar with that. I don't need to re-explain that. So there's no point for me to go back to that. Yeah. So what has not been created by the world, you have been a number of countries. Okay, here I say 184 countries. I think it's a little bit more than that now, right? So apologies if the number isn't correct, because I have to admit, so I found this sort of a description, this graph somewhere that I borrow. I probably need to mention that in my video so that people don't say that I'm actually stealing information, but it's for the whole purpose of explaining that to you how it works. So a number of countries have come together just to create. That was of the Kyoto Protocol that it came about. So these carbon market, carbon credit system, whereby so the organization will allocate to each companies, a credit, a certain amount of credit, especially the energy intensive companies. They are allocated a number of credit, that allow them to produce a certain amount of CO2, right? That's what it is. And what the system does is, essentially, it would reward the companies that are clean, that don't produce enough credit. They would develop a number of credit that they have at their disposal, because they either will removing or the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, or maybe reducing the amount of CO2 up in the atmosphere, and they get some credit for that, and those credit they're able to sell it to companies that are polluting a lot more. So that if you are, let's say, a company consuming a lot of energy, having a lot of CO2, right, and you know that with the cap and trade, or the amount of credit that you've been allocated, what you're actually producing is a lot higher than that. What you're going to do, you're going to do into the market, look for an offset, look to buy a credit from a company that is clean, that is not producing CO2 but removing CO2, and have some credit that they can sell to you. You would obviously buy that in order to offset for you the surplus, right? So that's what you need. And effectively, for companies that won't do that, right? So that won't actually offset the amount, the surplus of CO2 that they are producing. What they're having to do to government, those 184 countries' government, is to pay some fine. And obviously, the more time is passing, the more obviously those fines grow, and there is a cost of carbon, right? So, and as the system is going, just to create a system that is sort of reliable to working with market rules, what they do is actually the number of credit that is allocated. That's always for the compliance market. The number of credit that is actually in circulation is reducing, right? So that normally it should push the cost of carbon higher, right? So that's why it's becoming more and more expensive for company to actually produce carbon. This is how, in general, the system works. I just wanted to first of all explain that to you before I go into a little bit more explanation. Hopefully, it makes a little bit more sense, right? That's a simple way, simple format to explain it. If there are people actually in the room, if I can see there's a number of you listening. So first of all, thank you very much for doing that. So if you have any questions, just feel free to drop it here. So I'll be more than happy to respond to your question. But if obviously you don't understand how carbon market works, hopefully this simple explanation will explain to you how it works. Now, let me come back and sort of give you a bit more information around that, coming back to some information that maybe I would have gone very quickly. I know that I wanted to show first of all the graph, because some of you are sort of visual people. They obviously absorb the information a lot more when it's actually presented visually, as opposed to be done obviously just me talking. Yeah. So let me just come back again to the carbon market. So essentially, what we're talking about here. So those carbon credit, they are a component of national and international attempt to mitigate the greenhouse gas emission. So what they provide, it's a way to measure, a way to reduce, and a way to offset emissions, introducing economic incentive. That's what I've been explaining here for the emission reduction. And there is a number of breakdown. There's the items that you need to understand for you to figure out how carbon credit work, right? So first of all, you have the regulatory framework. Carbon credit, what they do, they emerge from regulatory framework. That's what they do is they set a limit of the amount of CO2 of any other greenhouse gas that a company can emit. That's the one I was actually showing you the first step, if you remember. And these framework could be mandatory, right? So that's the compliance market or voluntary. But what is actually most of the time driving the market is the voluntary carbon market. Yeah, the VCM. I'm sure you've heard about that. So, and I sort of mentioned also the cap and trade system. So what does it mean? Well, it simply means that under the system, right, government or regulatory bodies, what they do, they will set a cap on the amount of greenhouse gas that can be emitted, So when you have big companies, they are given, emission permits or allowances. And what those emission permit allowances actually do, it represents the right to emit a specific volume, right? And companies, that reduce the emission below the allocated amount, they can sell the surplus credit. And those that exceed the limit, they need to buy credit to offset their excess emissions. That's simply how it works. Very, very simple, right? And the generation of credit could be done in various ways. So first of all, you have the emission reduction. As a company, you can undertake activities that will directly reduce your greenhouse gas emission. And an example of those activities could be, I don't know, so improving energy efficiencies. Because I know a lot of people say, hey, I don't necessarily want to go green. I don't necessarily want to build a solar plant. I don't necessarily want to, I don't know, have a wind farm because I don't have the space. I don't have the roof for that yet. But what about energy efficiency? You can generate carbon, because what it means is that energy efficiency, you may be able to actually deliver the same amount of service or product that you have, producing a lot less energy. At the end of the day, producing lot less CO2. And if it happened that you're actually below the amount that would have been allocated to you, you get credit. Yeah. So anybody can do that. Even at your individual level, you can do it. That's what I'm saying here. Yeah. So emission reduction, that's the first way you can do it. But you also want to talk about the carbon offset project. These are the specific projects that reduce, remove, prevent the emission of greenhouse gas emissions. That's where you have, for example, reforestation project. You have methane captures, from landfill, or you have all the renewable energy project, like solar farm, wind farm. And once those projects are verified, so this project can generate carbon credit. And this is an area where actually I'm getting more and more involved with my company. Why? Simply because I say that we know finance, investment, money is a key component, right, in the fight that we are against climate change. Yeah, we need money to make sure that we can do a lot more project. And there's a lot of developers out there, they struggle to put project together. Would they know, these developers, that they can tap into the carbon market? And the job of the carbon market is to make it easy and seamless for people to understand. And I know sometimes these days, the size may be the problem. Sometimes projects are way too small to tap into that, and it's way too complicated, because obviously generate credit, there is a cost to that. Let's also be up and honest about it. Yeah. So, but that's obviously those costs are sometimes absorbed by companies who are brokers, who actually wanting you to produce the credit that they can sell to people who want to buy the credit. But end of the day, it's still sometimes a little bit too difficult, challenging for people to understand. So the whole idea, especially me coming in front of you today, Sunday evening, I know many of you will have lots of other things to do, but you choosing to listen to that, it's to explain to you how it works, and also explain to you how we can help you do that, so that if you have a project, you believe that you can tap into carbon project, to reach out. Yeah, excellent. So, and obviously, once you've generated a credit, obviously it needs to be verified. Very important, because what we want to do here is to ensure the integrity of the system. So, and to do that, what we have here, we have third-party organization, and this is where we work in a lot closely with those third-party organization that will validate and verify the actual emission reduction of a project. What they will do, they will assess whether the project meets specific criteria and standards, ensuring that those emission reductions are real, measurable, verifiable, and additional, right? So real, so basically the project is there, exists. You can measure the amount of CO2 that is being that is being reduced or avoided. Yeah, you can verify that, and you also want to demonstrate that. So there's some level of additionality, meaning that so that project would not have existed if there wasn't for the carbon market investment that was poured into it. And also making sure that we have generated the credit, so it's not going to be counted twice somewhere else, right? It's important. Yeah. So trading is a big part of it, because that's where you create the market. People that obviously produce a lot more CO2, and people that produce less, right? So they basically exchanging those carbon credit. That's the commodity that is created here. Because once it's generated and verified, those carbon credit, they are traded on carbon markets, and the idea. So obviously, there's usually two big system. I know there are many, much more than that, but big system. We have the Verra, we have the gold standard. You may have heard about it, or maybe not. Those are the two main systems that you see in the market. They're the two way of counting or establish those carbon credit, the two registry that you could find as well there. But they're actually more than that. Yeah. So once verified and generated, so they trade the carbon market. So the idea is to introduce a financial incentive for company to reduce their emissions, and companies, they can reduce emission at a lower cost, and they can sell the excess credit to obviously companies, who obviously have a reduction that is much more expensive, and finding sort of an economic balance. And once a credit is used, we have what we call retirement. Yeah. Once the credit is used to offset emission, it is retired to ensure that it cannot be used again. You want to maintain the integrity of the emission reduction process. You don't want a credit to be counted twice. Yeah. That'll be actually counterproductive. That is very, very, very important. And as I'll say, there's two types of market in the carbon market here. You have the compliance market, right? It's much more generated by the regulation that set cap and trade for every companies, and companies, especially big energy users, they have to follow that. But you also have the voluntary market, so beyond the regulatory framework. So the voluntary market is where organization, individual, they can purchase carbon credit to offset their carbon footprint. So even if they're not under regulatory obligation, yeah. And the markets so often support innovative and community-based projects. Yeah, so that's the thing. But one of the key point in the carbon market is probably the price. Yeah, price is a big topic, right? And that's where I guess a lot of work needs to be done. Even if we're looking at some of the let's say big outcome of the Africa Climate Week, Climate Summit, the carbon tax, price of carbon was definitely a topic that was mentioned there, because the cost of carbon is not universal, unfortunately. Yeah. So depending on the market where you're going, you would see a price. You go to others, you will see another price. So it's not universal at this point in time. So it may get there. So we hope it's going to get there, but at the moment, it's not the case yet, right? So you see the cost for the UK, for the EU. In America, you see that you go as well to New Zealand, who's actually quite advanced as well. So that was one of the first market, a carbon market there. Australia, and so on and so forth, right? So Singapore, we see that. So it's determined by supply and demand ultimately, yeah. So and you have factors like the regulatory measures, the success of emission reduction project, and also the speculation is a big part of it. Every time we talk about carbon market speculation, markets speculation is a big part of it. So carbon market won't escape that. It's very much a part of it. Yeah. So that's one thing that we need to understand. So yeah, that's definitely influenced a lot the market these days. Obviously, you would imagine there's a number of criticism and challenges that one has to see. Yeah. So the carbon credit, what it aims to do is to provide flexible mechanism, for achieving the emission reduction target. So that's what it does. So it's not without criticism, that obviously, yeah. So some argue that there are issues with verifying the legitimacy of certain projects. There's some other issue with double counting of reduction, or also say that it allows, heavily polluting company to simply buy their way out. It's sort of a credit to pollute instead of making substantial changes to the operation. Those critics, for me, could be hurt, yeah. But as I've always said, as we moving our way to net zero, let's say a cleaner world, I think we also have to be realistic and practical about, pragmatic as well about, some solution that will be developed. Like I say, so it's a constant progress. That's the way I see that. So it would be unrealistic to believe that there will be one solution that will come out that will be without any sort of the consequences. Anything we do, there's always a positive and negative, right? So, but as long as, generally speaking, it makes people moving forward to an objective that we all working towards, for me, I call it progress, yeah? And that is why, for me, I strongly encourage and support a carbon market. And in the emerging markets, for me, I think it's particularly a good way to make sure that some of these projects are supported. I personally prefer that to grants. I'll be honest. So anything that is market driven, it tends to be in general a lot more sustainable, right? That's what I'll say. So carbon credit, they are a tool, to financially incentivize the reduction of greenhouse gas emission by placing a value, right? That's what it does. It places a value on the act of reducing or offsetting emission. What they do, they bring together, environmental concern, with a market-based approach, market-based mechanism. So that's what essentially I wanted to talk to you about regarding carbon market, carbon credits. So hopefully it works well. And as I've said here, and I've been saying that for a few weeks now. So if you have project, if you produce project that is clean, definitely reach out to us because there are projects that are renewables, right? Either for them to tap into the IREC, the International Renewable Energy Certificate, or the carbon market. Very interested about that. Yeah. So the energy efficiency, yeah, definitely. So we want to be talking to you if you're doing that, and because there's many things that we could be doing. And on the flip side as well, if you are a company operating into the sector, and you just wanted to make sure that people get to know a lot more about you, a lot more about what you do, how you can help them. So my question to you is, as I always say, so do people know about you? Would your target audience know that you exist? How would you come out of obscurity to showcase what you have that is formidable to do? Many company, I would say many company, so far I've been in business, many companies, that is their number one challenge, getting out of obscurity. How can I showcase that I have a solution to that? You want to reach out to us because I definitely have something that may be of interest to us. So our awareness program may be of interest. So reach out to me and I'd be delighted to speak to you. So let me just look at some quick reaction that I've had here. So I guess because a little bit late, obviously, maybe not a lot of questions, but I have Olufemi Abel from Nigeria. So it's not very much part of carbon credit community. Carbon credit, it's actually worldwide. So Nigeria is definitely a big part of it. Another good thing with Nigeria is also part of the IREC, which is International Renewable Energy Certificate, because the IREC, it's at the moment restricted to countries that have obviously joined the framework, right? So the benefit of Nigeria, yes, you can tap into carbon credit, and yes, you can also tap into the renewable energy certificate. That's what I'm saying. If you have a project, especially if it's a project on the megawatt size, so we can help you look at that and see which one is better for you to tap into. So hopefully that responds to your question, right? So that is what I had to say for today. So hopefully you find it useful, insightful. And then, yeah, so I can't see any more questions. I'm just going to leave you with that. So hopefully that was okay. So don't forget the one day, one concept idea. When we take one idea, we explore that in 5 minutes, we want to make you more knowledgeable. We start tomorrow. But until then, guys, you have a wonderful evening. And I all want to say thank you for watching us. And don't forget to like, to comment, and to share. Guys, take care and have a great evening. Bye-bye.